The sky above Austin, Texas, was painted in shades of amber as the sun dipped beneath the skyline. On a quiet porch sat 56-year-old Thomas Whitaker, his worn-out rocking chair creaking beneath him. In his hand, he held a photograph of his younger self, full of dreams, energy, and ambition. As the wind whispered through the trees, Thomas took a long breath and thought about the 3 decades that had passed like a blur. They were filled with missed opportunities, wrong decisions, and hard-earned lessons. This wasn't a story of failure. It was a story of growth, one that began with ignorance and slowly matured into understanding, much too late. Thomas had grown up in a small town outside of Dallas, the eldest son of a mechanic and a nurse. Life was simple but not easy. His father, Hank Whitaker, believed in working hard and keeping your head down. "Don't talk too much, boy," he used to say. "Real men don't whine." Those words etched themselves into Thomas's mind like stone. As he got older, they became a creed, one he clung to even when it led him down the wrong paths. In high school, Thomas was a gifted writer. His English teacher, Mrs. Hartman, once told him, "You have something special. Don't bury it under expectations that don't belong to you." But Thomas didn't listen. Writing didn't pay the bills. Mechanics did. So when he graduated, he followed in his father's footsteps and joined the family garage. The writing dream got boxed up and shoved deep into the attic of his heart. At 21, Thomas married a girl named Jessica Malone. She was sweet, intelligent, and believed in him more than he believed in himself. They had met at a diner where she worked part-time while studying to be a teacher. Thomas remembered the way she smiled when she handed him coffee, the way she laughed even when he was awkward. It was easy to fall for her. But love, as he'd learn later, isn't enough without self-awareness. Their first few years were fine, even joyful. But Thomas was stubborn. He didn't know how to express emotion, didn't know how to be vulnerable. When he was stressed, he shut down. When he failed, he blamed the world. "I'm doing this for us," he'd often shout, especially when he worked double shifts and ignored her needs. But Jessica didn't want long hours. She wanted presence. She wanted a partner who would sit down and ask her about her day. Thomas didn't know how to do that. By the time he was 30, they had 2 children, Caleb and Emily. Parenthood should have softened him, but it only made him more distant. He saw fatherhood as responsibility, not connection. He taught them discipline, made sure their grades were good, but missed every recital and soccer game. "I'm building your future," he'd tell them. But in doing so, he missed their present. At 35, Thomas's marriage collapsed. Jessica left. No drama, no yelling. Just a quiet morning with packed bags and a folded note that read, "I need to find myself before I forget who I am." That was the first time Thomas cried in years. He sat alone in their house, staring at walls that once echoed with laughter. He didn't fight her decision because deep down he knew he had pushed her away. The following years were a blur of regret and realization. He tried to reconnect with Caleb and Emily, but the gap was wide. They were polite but distant, like guests in a home they once knew. He began to understand the value of things he had once dismissed: emotional presence, patience, kindness. He began journaling again, rediscovering his passion for writing. Late nights became letters to himself, raw and unfiltered. That was when the transformation truly began. 40, Thomas finally did something brave. He enrolled in a local community college to study creative writing. He was the oldest in the class by at least a decade, but he didn't care. He was finally doing something for himself, not to earn money, not to meet someone's expectations, but to nourish the part of him he had long neglected. He wrote about his childhood, his marriage, the way it felt to be a stranger to your own kids. His professor, Dr. Wallace, encouraged him to publish. "Pain," Dr. Wallace said, "is a powerful teacher. You've met it. Now let others learn from it." Thomas Self published a book of essays titled Letters from a Regretful Man. It wasn't a bestseller, but it resonated. He got emails from strangers thanking him for his honesty. One message stood out from Caleb. "I read your book, Dad. I didn't know you felt those things. Maybe we can talk sometime." That was the first crack in the wall. It took months of slow, sometimes awkward conversations, but the wall eventually crumbled. Thomas and his children began to rebuild a relationship. Not perfect but real. Emily was in law school. Caleb was a paramedic. They were strong, independent adults, and he was proud. He just wished he had told them that more when they were younger. Now, as Thomas sat on his porch, he thought of the lessons he wished he'd learned earlier. He wished he had learned that vulnerability wasn't weakness. For so long, he had equated silence with strength. But true strength lies in opening up and saying, "I need help," or "I'm hurting." It lies in being honest, not just with others but with yourself. He wished he had understood that time is a currency you can't get back. The hours he spent chasing money, he could have spent making memories. Success isn't just about what you build, it's about who you build it with. He wished he had learned to forgive sooner. Holding on to resentment was like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. He had wasted years blaming his father for his emotional absence, his wife for leaving, even his children for pulling away. But the truth was, he had played a part in all of it. He wished he had known that your job doesn't define you. For decades, he introduced himself as a mechanic, as if that were his whole identity. But now, as a writer, a listener, and a better father, he saw that who you are is shaped by how you live, not what you do. He wished he had listened more. Not to respond, just to understand. His younger self had been too eager to prove something. He wanted to be right, not kind. And in doing so, he missed what others were trying to say. He wished he had taken care of his health sooner. The long nights, the poor diet, the stress, it caught up with him. He was now on medication, walking with a limp from years of neglect. Health isn't just about looking good. It's about being there, for birthdays, weddings, and ordinary Tuesday mornings. And above all, he wished he had loved himself sooner. For years, he had criticized every flaw, doubted every move. But the truth was, he was doing his best with what he knew. He wasn't perfect, but he was trying. And that had to count for something. As the wind picked up, Thomas stood up and walked inside. He sat at his desk and opened his laptop. The cursor blinked on a new page. He began typing his next essay. Don't wait until you're 56. It was a message to men like him, to the younger versions of himself still trapped in ego and silence. He wrote, "You don't need to burn down your life to start over. You just need to listen. To yourself, to others, to the voice you buried beneath fear. Life isn't a straight path. It's a winding road with forks and detours. And even if you took the wrong one, it's never too late to turn back." The essay went viral. It was shared by parenting blogs, mental health advocates, and even featured in a podcast called Real Talks. Thomas was invited to speak at a high school graduation. He stood on stage in a simple,